Hey, tonight we dive into the shadowy world of ancient Egypt, where golden tombs hide more than just treasures. They harbor whispers of curses that could make even the bravest shudder. You'll probably learn a lot from this story, especially why the fear of Pharaoh's curses has lingered for centuries like a stubborn desert mirage. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Press the notification bell to update many new videos. And hey, while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing who's joining this midnight adventure. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the blistering Egyptian sands, the sun, a merciless overseer, beating down on your shoulders, until you stumble upon a hidden entrance sealed tight for millennia. Imagine that moment, the thrill of stepping into darkness, into a silent world where dust dances in the faint beam of your torch, and every step echoes in the still air like a heartbeat from the past. This is where the idea of the curse begins deep. In the tombs of the pharaohs, those god-kings who ruled Egypt with an iron fist and a divine claim. Pharaohs weren't just rulers. They were living gods. Their tombs, vast underground palaces filled with treasures, were meant to protect their journey to the afterlife, but they also carried warnings. You see, the ancient Egyptians believed fiercely in protecting their dead from desecration. The legends say curses were carved or inscribed to ward off grave robbers. These weren't just bedtime stories. They were intended as real threats. Yet, how much of the fear around Pharaoh's tombs is truth, and how much is legend? Historians still argue whether these curses were actual mystical defenses or clever psychological deterrents against tomb robbers. The earliest mentions of tomb curses are murky. Some inscriptions warn of death and misfortune for anyone who disturbs the sacred resting places. Others speak of magical punishments that will follow the violators into their own tombs. But here's the quirky bit. Not all tombs have these inscriptions, and some famous ones don't have any curse warnings at all. It's as if the fear itself became part of the protection. A ghost story whispered among the sands to scare off the greedy. Pharaohs were obsessed with the afterlife, and the tomb was their fortress. Think of it as a cosmic insurance policy wrapped in gold and spells. If you dared to break the seal, you risked not just angering the gods, but inviting a supernatural vendetta. Of course, this fear plays into the timeless human fascination with death and the unknown, mixing real reverence with a dash of theatrical flair. So, as you imagine yourself stepping past those ancient doors, feeling the chill that doesn't quite fit the desert heat, remember, the curse of the pharaohs began long before modern explorers ever unearthed those treasures. It began with a people who saw death not as an end, but as a dangerous journey guarded by unseen powers. You're standing on the edge of history itself, the dry Egyptian air buzzing with excitement and a hint of something darker, like the calm before a sandstorm. It's November 1922, and the world's eyes are glued to a remote valley near the Nile, where a British archaeologist named Howard Carter is about to change everything. You feel the weight of anticipation as Carter's team chips away the last bits of stone, revealing a sealed doorway long forgotten by time. This is the moment when the tomb of Tutankhamun, the boy king, bursts into the modern spotlight. Tut's reign was brief and mostly unremarkable, but his tomb, untouched by grave robbers for over 3,000 years, became the most important archaeological discovery of the 20th century. You can almost hear the gasps as Carter peers inside and sees golden artifacts glittering in the torchlight, every object whispering secrets of an ancient world. But with the wonder came unease. Stories started swirling that this discovery had unleashed something sinister. A month after the tomb's opening, Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's financial backer, died suddenly of an infected mosquito bite. Headlines screamed about a curse, targeting those who disturbed Tut's rest. Newspapers played up every minor mishap among the team, turning curiosity into a frenzy of superstition. You might chuckle at the idea, but back then, these stories gripped the public imagination like wildfire. Here's a quirky tidbit. One member of Carter's team reported hearing strange noises at night and seeing eerie lights flicker over the tomb's entrance. Skeptics say it was exhaustion and desert mirages. Believers saw proof of the curse. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Historians still argue whether these incidents were coincidence or the result of mass hysteria, fueled by sensational media. Digging deeper, the tomb's walls held intricate paintings and spells meant to protect Tut's journey beyond death. Yet, nothing prepared the world for the sudden deaths, accidents, and misfortunes that seemed to stalk those who dared disturb the boy king's eternal chamber. Some researchers suggest these tragedies had scientific explanations: bacteria sealed in the tomb, toxic mold, or even simple bad luck. Still, the myth of the mummy's curse took hold and has never really let go. You can picture it now, the world wide awake at night, whispering about a curse that stretches across millennia, blending history and legend into a potent cocktail of fear and fascination. You find yourself swept up in the swirling fog of rumor and superstition that rose like a desert storm in the wake of Tutankhamun's tomb discovery. The mummy's curse was born not just from ancient inscriptions, but from the fevered imaginations of journalists, storytellers, and a public hungry for mystery. It's almost like the curse was crafted as carefully as the Pharaohs. Treasures in invention as potent as any magic spell. The media loved it. Headlines screamed warnings of death and doom for those who dared disturb the boy king's resting place. Every cough, every misstep, every sudden illness was spun into evidence of a supernatural vendetta. You might smirk, but remember, this was a time when radio dramas and pulp fiction thrived on spooky tales, so the mummy's curse fit right in, feeding a cultural craving for the eerie and unexplained. One quirky detail: some claimed the curse's power came from a secret death mask that held mystical energy, though no such mask was found to have any special properties beyond its artistry. The legend even stretched to animals. Cats near the tomb reportedly acted strangely, and several deaths of those associated with the expedition were linked to the curse by rumor alone. Historians still argue whether the curse was a genuine ancient threat or simply a modern myth amplified by sensationalism. After all, many on the expedition lived long, healthy lives, while some died in ways unrelated to the tomb. The pattern of misfortune, it seems, was selectively highlighted, while the many uneventful outcomes faded into obscurity. The curse narrative tapped into deep human fears of death, the unknown, and disrespecting the dead. It played on the idea that some secrets should remain buried and that ancient powers could reach across time to punish the living. Yet, as you stare into the flickering candlelight of this tale, you realize the curse may say as much about Usa's fascination with mystery and dread as about ancient Egypt itself. So, as you drift deeper into this story, ask yourself, is the curse real, or is it just a story we tell to make sense of death and the past? You slide deeper into the tangled web of truth and myth that clings to the story of the Pharaoh's curse, and it quickly becomes clear that separating fact from fiction is like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. On one side, you have the archaeological records carefully catalogued, scientifically analyzed, and cautiously interpreted. On the other, the explosive tales of doom and mystery, whispered from newspaper headlines to midnight campfires. Both sides tell a story, but the question is, which one rings truer? Real archaeological evidence shows that ancient Egyptians took death seriously, perhaps more seriously than any culture before or since. Their tombs were elaborate, meticulously planned, and filled with spells and protections designed to safeguard the pharaoh's soul on its journey to the afterlife. These inscriptions, while sometimes ominous, were part of a religious worldview where disturbing the dead was taboo, not just out of fear but respect. Some tombs include warnings that promise retribution, but these are generally formulas meant to deter robbers, not mystical curses guaranteeing instant death. Yet here's where the line blurs. When Howard Carter opened Tutankhamun's tomb, the outside world wasn't prepared for the flood of sensational stories. The deaths and illnesses that followed were real enough to fuel paranoia, but many can be explained by natural causes. For example, bacteria and mold sealed in the tomb might have caused respiratory infections among the team. This scientific possibility offers a less glamorous but more plausible explanation for some of the misfortunes, reminding you that not every ghost story needs ghosts. Still, some tombs did have inscriptions with explicit threats. The tomb of Kentika Ikaki, for instance, includes curses meant to frighten away robbers. You can almost imagine the fear that tomb robbers felt when they encountered these warnings. Whether or not they believed in the supernatural, the risk was very real. This mix of practical threat and spiritual warning is a recurring theme in Egyptian burial customs. Here's a quirky tidbit. In some cases, the supposed curses weren't ancient at all, but added later by locals or early explorers to discourage tomb robbing. It's like an ancient version of Beware of Dog Signs X, with more sand and scarabs. Historians still argue whether these curses were truly effective deterrents or just clever psychological tricks. You also have to remember the human factor. Early 20th century archaeologists were often under immense pressure, working in harsh desert conditions with limited medical knowledge. Illness and accidents were common. Some experts suggest that the curse was a way to explain the dangers they faced, which were very real but not supernatural. The myth of the Pharaohs. Curse thrives because it appeals to something primal, the fear that our actions have consequences beyond what we understand. It's the ultimate cautionary tale: don't meddle with what's sacred or pay the price. But as you look closer, you see the story is less about curses and more about respect, fear, and the mysteries of death that have fascinated humans forever. So, as you rest your head tonight, remember this: the truth behind the Pharaoh's curse is as layered as the desert sands, half fact, half legend, and all woven into the human story. You step into the vast, sun-baked world of ancient Egyptian belief, where death is not an end but a precarious passage to another realm. In this mindset, the pharaoh's tomb was less a grave and more a gateway, a meticulously prepared home for the soul's eternal journey. The Egyptians' obsession with the afterlife colors everything about their burial customs, and understanding this worldview is key to unraveling the curse mystery. Imagine standing in a tomb chamber, the walls alive with vibrant hieroglyphics and colorful paintings depicting gods, magical spells, and scenes of the afterlife. These weren't just decorations. They were vital guides to help the deceased navigate the dangerous terrain beyond death. The Egyptians believed the soul faced trials, judgment, and a final reckoning. all requiring preparation and protection. One of the most famous texts you'd find in tombs is the Book of the Dead, a collection of spells and incantations designed to guard the spirit from evil forces and to ensure safe passage through the underworld. These spells often included warnings to potential tomb robbers, promising curses and misfortune if the tomb was disturbed. You can almost feel the solemnity and gravity of these inscriptions, meant to bridge life and death with words powerful enough to influence both. The role of magic in ancient Egypt was intertwined with religion and daily life. Pharaohs were seen as divine intermediaries, and their protection extended beyond death through rituals, amulets, and curses. The curse, in this sense, was a sacred tool, not a mere scare tactic. Yet historians still argue whether these curses were ever meant to be genuinely feared or were symbolic gestures expressing the seriousness of desecration. Now, here's a quirky detail. Some spells and curses invoked gods who were fearsome but oddly specific. For example, the scorpion goddess, or Sekhmet, a fiery deity who could unleash wrath but also heal. It's like calling on a cosmic bouncer with a fiery attitude to guard the tomb's sanctity. These divine protectors personified the dangers awaiting those who dared disrespect the dead. But Egyptians didn't just rely on words. They used physical protections, to amulets with protective powers, statues to ward off evil spirits, and intricate layouts designed to confuse or trap intruders. This shows a practical side to their magic, blending faith with engineering. The whole system was part of a deeply held respect for the dead, and a fear of chaos disrupting the tomb meant risking cosmic disorder, which was the greatest horror in Egyptian belief. So the curse wasn't just about personal vengeance, but about preserving the balance of the universe. As you imagine yourself inside one of these tombs, with the scent of resin and incense faint in the air and shadows playing on ancient walls, you begin to grasp how seriously the Egyptians took death and why the curse stories, in some way, echo those ancient fears. You walk carefully through the dim corridors of a pharaoh's tomb, where the air is thick with the scent of resin and the faint, dusty whispers of ancient rituals. Before you lies one of the most fascinating mysteries of ancient Egypt, the process of mummification, an art perfected over millennia to preserve the body for eternity. It's this practice that fuels much of the modern fascination and fear around the idea of curses. Imagine the embalming chamber, alive with the flicker of oil lamps as priests in ritual garb begin the sacred work. They remove the internal organs with precision, dry the body using natron salt, and wrap it in layers of linen strips, each bandage carefully placed with prayers and spells. This wasn't just about preservation, it was about creating a vessel for the soul that could withstand the journey beyond death. The mummification process was a closely guarded secret, wrapped in religious significance and technical skill. You might be surprised to learn that not every Egyptian was mummified. This privilege was largely reserved for royalty and the wealthy elite. For the pharaohs, it was an essential step to ensure their divine status continued into the afterlife. But here's a quirky detail that adds a little intrigue. Some tombs contain false doors and shabby figurines, miniature servants, meant to come to life and serve the deceased. It's like the ultimate ancient Egyptian version of ordering room service from beyond the grave. These objects, along with the mummified body, were part of a magical system designed to protect the soul and maintain its comfort. You may have heard that mummies are cursed, but historians still argue whether the embalming chemicals combined with sealed tomb environments might have actually released toxic molds or gases harmful to those who enter the tomb. Could this be a scientific route for the curse stories? Perhaps the ancient rituals unknowingly created real physical dangers that masqueraded as supernatural punishment. Some modern researchers have found evidence of bacteria, like aspergillus and other pathogens, lurking in tombs. These microscopic threats could explain sudden illnesses among tomb explorers without invoking the paranormal. So, the curse might be more of a biological hazard than a magical hex. But whatever the truth, the image of the perfectly preserved mummy, wrapped in linen and sealed away for eternity, has captured imaginations worldwide. It's a symbol of the ancient Egyptians' mastery over death and a reminder that even in preserving life, they left behind stories that haunt us today. You continue wandering deeper into the labyrinth of ancient Egypt's mystical defenses, your fingers tracing the worn inscriptions that snake across tomb walls like serpents guarding forbidden secrets. These inscriptions aren't just decorative. They are potent spells and warnings, etched with divine authority to protect the pharaoh's eternal rest. The ancients believed these words carried real power enough to deter even the most daring tomb raiders. Imagine stumbling upon a chilling warning: "He who disturbs this tomb shall be struck down by the gods." Such curses weren't mere superstitions, but formalized declarations meant to invoke divine wrath. The spells often called upon fearsome gods like Anubis, the jackal-headed protector of the dead, or Set, the chaotic force that could bring destruction to the wicked. These inscriptions blend religious solemnity with a clear message: respect the tomb, or suffer the consequences. Yet, it's not just about scaring off grave robbers. These curses functioned as spiritual safeguards, part of a complex system of magic designed to maintain cosmic order. Ancient Egyptians saw their world as balanced between matter and harmony and isfit chaos and destruction. Tomb desecration threatened to tip this balance, unleashing chaos, both earthly and cosmic. So, the curse was a warning to maintain the universe's fragile equilibrium. Now, here's a quirky bit. Some inscriptions included bizarre threats, like "May your body be devoured by crocodiles," or "May snakes bite you in the night." You can almost imagine tomb robbers shivering as they read these, half hoping the gods were listening. But strangely, these vivid threats weren't always consistent. Different tombs had wildly different curses, reflecting local beliefs and the personality of the tomb's owner. Historians still argue whether these curses ever truly worked or were mainly symbolic gestures. After all, tomb robbing was common despite the warnings, suggesting that fear wasn't always enough to deter greed and desperation. In some cases, the curses might have been designed to psychologically torment robbers after the fact, haunting their dreams and adding a supernatural weight to their crimes. Interestingly, some tomb curses weren't ancient at all, but later additions by priests or locals who sought to protect sacred sites in a time when law enforcement was limited. It's like an ancient security system powered by fear and faith, rather than locks and alarms. So, as you run your hand over these ancient threats, consider how words carved in stone became one of the pharaoh's last lines of defense, blending faith, magic, and psychology in a timeless dance of protection and power. You find yourself drawn into the shadowy tales that stretch beyond Tutankhamun's golden tomb stories of other pharaohs whose resting places seem to echo with whispers of misfortune and eerie happenings. The legend of the curse isn't exclusive to King Tut. It's a tapestry woven from many threads, some frayed by time and others bright with intrigue. Take the tomb of Pharaoh Seti, for example. When it was first uncovered, workers reported strange accidents and inexplicable illnesses. Some claimed shadows moved where no one stood, and a sense of unease settled like dust in the corridors. This fueled the rumor mill and added to the growing fear that the Pharaoh's wrath wasn't limited to Tutankhamun's tomb alone. Yet historians still argue whether these incidents were genuine supernatural warnings, or simply the result of poor ventilation, toxic molds, or even just human imagination running wild. There's also the tale of the tomb of Amenhotep II, whose chambers were believed to be haunted by vengeful spirits. Explorers reported unsettling noises and sudden chills that made their skin crawl. Some skeptics suggest that the combination of ancient curses, the eerie silence of the desert, and the mind's tendency to fill unknown spaces with fear created a perfect storm for ghost stories. But here's a quirky tidbit that's hard to ignore. In some tombs, especially those untouched for centuries, explorers found strange markings and symbols that didn't match the known hieroglyphic styles, interpreted them as protective magic or warnings left by ancient priests to confuse or frighten potential robbers. These cryptic signs add a layer of mystery, hinting at a secret language of curses and protection that we are still trying to decipher. These stories from beyond Tut's tomb remind you that the fear of the Pharaoh's curse is a broad legend, not a one-hit wonder. Each tomb has its own narrative, some grounded in fact, others blossoming into myth. Together, they create a rich folklore tapestry, blending real dangers with supernatural dread. So, as you wander these ancient corridors, in your mind, you realize the curse is less a single curse and more a chorus of warnings echoing through time, each adding to the legend's chilling symphony. You stand at the crossroads where ancient superstition meets modern science, trying to make sense of the curse through the cold lens of evidence and reason. The eerie tales of sudden deaths and strange illnesses have long captivated imaginations, but scientists suggest there may be far more earthly explanations lurking in those shadowy tombs. Think about the sealed environment of a pharaoh's tomb, a dark, airtight chamber left untouched for thousands of years. Inside, you'd find layers of dust, decaying organic matter, and the remains of embalming substances that may have fermented or decomposed over time. This concoction can produce dangerous mold spores, bacteria, and even toxic gases like carbon dioxide or methane. Trapped within the sealed space, when the tomb is opened, these invisible invaders escape, potentially causing respiratory problems, allergic reactions, or infections. Researchers have discovered fungi such as Aspergillus flavus in tombs known to cause serious lung conditions. Could these microscopic threats explain some of the illnesses reported by early explorers? It's a compelling hypothesis that blends science with legend, turning curses into biological hazards. There's also the matter of the embalming chemicals themselves. Arsenic, formaldehyde, and other toxic substances used in mummification. These compounds, while preserving the body, might have left dangerous residues inside tombs, exposing visitors to harmful substances. So the curse might have been less about God's wrath and more about a toxic welcome party. But here's a quirky detail. Some studies suggest that the bacteria found in tombs might have actually evolved unique survival traits, adapting to the tomb's extreme environment. These extremophiles could produce unexpected effects on human visitors. Fueling the mystery, historians still argue whether these scientific findings fully explain the curse myths, or if there's something else at play: psychological fear, confirmation bias, or the power of suggestion. After all, when you expect danger, Your mind can turn the slightest cough or stumble into proof of the supernatural. You also have to consider the real risks. Early archaeologists faced harsh desert conditions, infections from minor injuries, and the toll of intense labor. Sometimes the curse is just a story we tell to make sense of very human misfortunes. So next time you hear a chilling tale of a mummy's curse, remember the invisible spores and toxins lurking in the tombs. Stillness reminders that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones we can't see. You're caught in the whirlwind of Egyptomania, the early 20th century craze that turned everything Egyptian into a must-have obsession. From jewelry to fashion to spooky stories about cursed tombs. This craze didn't just fuel fascination. It supercharged the myth of the Pharaohs' curse, blending genuine historical curiosity with sensationalism and wild imagination. Picture the world's elite donning Egyptian-inspired costumes, jazz musicians weaving Egyptian motifs into their songs, and artists flooding galleries with images of pyramids and mummies. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb happened right in the heart of this craze, and the timing couldn't have been better to ignite the curse legend. Suddenly, the boy king's treasures weren't just relics. They were symbols of mystery, danger, and forbidden knowledge. This Egyptomania frenzy fed the public's appetite for exotic tales. Newspapers and radio shows played up every eerie detail: strange deaths, mysterious illnesses, unexplained noises, painting the mummy's curse as a real and present danger. The curse became a cultural phenomenon, blurring the lines between history and horror. Here's a quirky tidbit: Egyptomania even influenced Hollywood, inspiring the first wave of mummy movies that portrayed the cursed pharaoh as a relentless, supernatural force. These films cemented the mummy curse in pop culture, a legacy that still haunts Halloween costumes and thriller plots today. Historians still argue how much of the curse's popularity was driven by genuine fear and how much by commercial interests, exploiting the craze. After all, selling newspapers and movie tickets often required a good scare. The Egyptomania era reminds you how cultural trends can transform historical facts into legends, shaping collective memory with a mix of fascination and fear. It's a powerful example of how myth evolves, riding waves of popular imagination. So, as you sit back tonight, think about how a global obsession turned an archaeological find into a legend that continues to captivate, blending history, fantasy, and a touch of the supernatural into one unforgettable story. You walk alongside those early archaeologists, not in the dusty safety of a lab, but amid the harsh sun and swirling sandstorms of Egypt's unforgiving desert. Their perilous work wasn't just about uncovering treasures, but about facing real, mortal dangers. The stories of their exploits are filled with near misses, illnesses, and even death, feeding the legend of the Pharaoh's curse. But how much of that is fact, and how much is fiction? Consider Howard Carter himself, the man who uncovered tomb. He survived countless hazards: venomous snakes slithering near camp, deadly infections, and the ever-present threat of sunstroke. His dedication was extraordinary, but so was the danger that came with his job. You might wonder if these genuine risks gave birth to exaggerated tales of supernatural retribution. Here's a quirky detail. Many early archaeologists believed in the curse, at least to some extent. Some wore protective amulets or performed rituals to ward off evil before entering tombs. Imagine a group of hardened scientists clutching charms, half hoping they'd work that's human nature for you, blending reason with superstition when facing the unknown. Historians still argue whether the dangers of early tomb exploration were any more severe than those faced by other explorers of the era, or if the myth of the curse amplified the perception of risk. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, with real dangers intensified by cultural fears and sensational storytelling. Additionally, you have to consider the technological limitations of the time nor modern medical care, limited knowledge of desert illnesses, and equipment that would be laughably primitive today. Even minor wounds could become life-threatening infections. This grim reality sometimes got wrapped up in tales of curses and vengeful spirits. So, while the myth of the cursed archaeologist makes for thrilling stories, remember that many of these explorers faced very real, very human threats, dangers born of nature, not magic. The curse may have been their way of making sense of the unknown hazards lurking in the desert's shadows. You begin to see that the stories of curses may have served more than just a spooky function. They might have been political tools cleverly used to protect power and prestige. In ancient Egypt, the tomb wasn't just a resting place. It was a symbol of authority, divine right, and control over both the living and the dead. So, could curses have been part of a political strategy to keep tombs secure and maintain order? Imagine powerful priests or ruling elites using curses as warnings, not merely mystical threats, but messages reinforcing the sanctity of the pharaoh's domain. These curses might have discouraged not only grave robbers, but also political rivals, who might seek to challenge the king's legacy or claim the tomb's treasures for themselves. After all, the tomb was a treasure chest of wealth and power, and its desecration could disrupt social order. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some scholars suggest that curses were sometimes exaggerated or even fabricated after tombs were robbed, to shift blame and intimidate future robbers or skeptics. It's like the ancient equivalent of a security company threatening consequences to trespassers, except with more hieroglyphics and less paperwork. Historians still argue about how deliberate this use of curses was. Were they sacred spells meant only for spiritual protection, or were they political tools wielded by those in power to manipulate fear and maintain control? Likely, it was a bit of both, blending religious belief with practical governance. Consider also how the political landscape of Egypt shifted over centuries. Different dynasties might have repurposed or reinterpreted curses to serve their own agendas, enhancing the mystique of tombs while protecting their claims to legitimacy. So, as you trace the lines of these ancient warnings, you realize they are more than just spooky stories. They are echoes of a world where power, politics, and faith intertwined in ways that still intrigue us today. You step into the present day, where the tools of modern science, DNA analysis, carbon dating, and ground-penetrating radar shine a new light on ancient mysteries and challenge old legends. Today's archaeologists are a far cry from the treasure hunters of the past. They approach tombs with care, respect, and an arsenal of technology designed to unlock secrets without disturbing the delicate balance of the past. But what do they make of the curses? Modern Egyptologists tend to view the curse stories with a skeptical eye. For many, curses are fascinating cultural artifacts rather than genuine supernatural threats. They see them as part of the ancient Egyptians' religious and symbolic worldview, a way to express the importance of respecting the dead and the power of divine justice. Scientific studies into tomb conditions support natural explanations for illnesses and accidents, further deflating the supernatural theory. But, of course, the allure of curses persists. Many archaeologists admit to feeling a thrill or a slight chill when entering an untouched tomb, aware of the centuries-old warnings carved into stone. It's part of the human experience, blending scientific curiosity with a touch of awe and mystery. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some archaeologists still perform rituals or carry protective amulets before entering tombs, more out of tradition or respect than fear. It's a nod to the past, acknowledging the weight of history even as they rely on cutting-edge science. Historians still argue about the balance between respecting ancient beliefs and applying modern skepticism. Some caution that dismissing curses outright risks ignoring the cultural significance they held for the Egyptians themselves. You also have to consider that modern excavation ethics emphasize preservation and cultural sensitivity, aiming to avoid the reckless disruptions of the past that may have contributed to the curse legends. So, as you imagine the bright lights of a contemporary dig site, with scientists delicately brushing away dust and recording every detail, you realize the story of the curse is evolving, not vanishing, but transforming alongside our understanding of history. You're back in the flickering glow of a silver screen or the crisp pages of a thriller novel, where the mummy's curse has become a star in its own right. Pop culture has taken the ancient fears and wrapped them in layers of suspense, horror, and sometimes campy fun. The curse has escaped the dusty tombs and taken on a life of its own, captivating audiences worldwide, from the classic 1932 film The Mummy to countless modern adaptations. The story of a restless pharaoh rising from the dead to exact revenge has become a staple of horror and adventure genres. These movies blend Egyptian mythology with dramatic effects, turning curses into vengeful, supernatural forces. You might chuckle at some of the overdone portrayals, but you can't deny their power in shaping how we think about ancient Egypt. Here's a quirky tidbit. Hollywood has even inspired real-life fashion trends and Halloween costumes, with the mummy wrapping becoming an instantly recognizable icon. The curse story has morphed into a cultural touchstone, a shared myth that transcends generations and continents. Historians still argue whether these portrayals do justice to the actual history or simply exploit it for entertainment. While some criticize the oversimplification and stereotypes, others acknowledge that popular culture keeps ancient Egypt in the public imagination, sparking curiosity and sometimes leading to genuine interest and study. The curse in pop culture feeds into our fascination with the supernatural and the unknown, reminding you why ghost stories and legends never really die. They evolve, taking on new shapes and meanings with each retelling. So, as you curl up tonight, think about how the mummy's curse lives on, not just in dusty tomes, but in the stories we tell around campfires, on screens, and in books, keeping the spirit of ancient Egypt alive in our collective dreams. You find yourself stepping into the shadowy underworld of tomb robbers' figures, both feared and fascinating, whose acts of greed helped fuel the legend of the Pharaoh's curse. For centuries, these thieves have risked death and divine wrath to plunder the riches buried with Egypt's kings. Their daring exploits and the consequences they faced form an essential chapter in the curse's story. Imagine the desperate figure slipping through dark tunnels, guided only by flickering torches, hoping to snatch gold and jewels without waking the wrath of the gods. Tomb robbing was a dangerous business. It often involved secret passages, deadly traps, and the ever-present fear of curses. Some robbers reportedly fled their loot behind, haunted by nightmares or struck by mysterious illnesses. Here's a quirky detail. Some robbers left graffiti inside tombs' inscriptions, begging for forgiveness or warning future looters to beware. It's as if they believed the curses, too late regretting their crimes. Historians still argue how much the curses truly deterred robbers. Evidence shows that tomb raiding was rampant throughout Egyptian history, suggesting greed often outweighed fear. Yet, the threat of divine punishment remained a powerful psychological weapon. The consequences faced by tomb robbers, whether real or imagined, added layers of drama and terror to the curse legend. In some cases, those who desecrated tombs faced swift justice from human authorities, while others were said to have died mysteriously, reinforcing the belief in supernatural retribution. This ongoing battle between preservation and plunder shaped Egypt's archaeological history, reminding you that the curse was as much about protecting legacy as it was about punishing disrespect. So, as you imagine the shadowy figures of ancient tomb robbers, you see how their stories helped forge the lasting myth of the Pharaohs' curse, a tale of temptation, danger, and the price of greed. You're now tracing the footsteps of those intrepid explorers and archaeologists who pushed past superstition and risk to uncover the secrets of Egypt's tombs. Their stories are a mix of adventure, scientific discovery, and, yes, a healthy dose of fear. These individuals often found themselves caught between reverence for the past and the thrill of unearthing treasures that had slept for millennia. Consider the life of Flinders Petrie, one of the pioneers of systematic archaeology in Egypt. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Petrie approached his work with scientific rigor, carefully documenting finds and context. He was skeptical of curses, but even he couldn't deny the eerie atmosphere that sometimes surrounded the tombs. You can almost feel the tension as his team worked in harsh conditions, balancing excitement with caution. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some archaeologists kept protective charms on hand, or performed small rituals before entering tombs, blending scientific discipline with cultural respect and a touch of superstition. It's a reminder that even the most rational minds wrestled with ancient fears. Historians still argue how much these beliefs influenced archaeological methods and discoveries. Did fear of curses slow progress, or did it foster a deeper respect for the sites? The answer is complex. While superstition may have caused hesitation, it also inspired meticulous care that preserved treasures for future generations. These explorers faced not just curses, but real challenges: extreme weather, disease, political instability, and the physical toll of their work. Their courage and curiosity opened windows into a lost world, but they often paid a steep price. As you imagine these figures working under the blazing sun and starry nights, you sense the blend of wonder and wariness that defined early Egyptology. Their legacy is not just in artifacts, but in the stories and myths they helped shape, stories that continue to fascinate and mystify us today. You step into the complex relationship between ancient Egyptian religion and the modern understanding of curses, where faith and history collide in fascinating ways. For the Egyptians, the afterlife was not merely a hope, but a guaranteed continuation of existence if only the soul could navigate the perilous journey successfully. Curses, then, were part of the spiritual machinery designed to protect this sacred passage. Imagine the powerful gods of Egypt watching over the dead, their divine presence invoked through spells and inscriptions designed to protect the tomb. Anubis, the god of embalming, and Osiris, ruler of the underworld, were central figures in this cosmic drama. These deities were not just mythological characters, but real forces believed to govern life, death, and justice. Here's a quirky tidbit. The Egyptians believed in a weighing of the heart ceremony, where the deceased's heart was weighed against the feather of truth and justice. If the heart was heavier, the soul faced eternal punishment. This vivid image connects morality with afterlife destiny and underscores why desecration was so feared could doom the soul. Historians still argue how much ancient Egyptians believed curses could manifest in the physical world versus serving as symbolic warnings. Some scholars see curses as psychological tools, while others argue for their spiritual efficacy in the context of Egyptian religion. The persistence of curse stories reflects not only ancient fears but modern fascination with death's mysteries. It also highlights how religion shapes human responses to mortality and respect for the dead. As you contemplate this, you realize the curse is a bridge connecting the ancient world's deep spirituality with our ongoing quest to understand life, death, and what lies beyond. You begin to appreciate how the myth of the Pharaoh's curse is more than just ancient superstition, a reflection of humanity's timeless fear of death and the unknown. Across cultures and centuries, people have woven stories of curses and divine punishment to explain misfortune, especially when it involves the dead. Egypt's pharaohs just happen to have one of the most enduring and captivating versions. Consider that the idea of a curse offers a kind of narrative controller, way to impose order on chaos. When the unexpected strikes death, illness, disaster, attributing it to a curse helps people make sense of the senseless. It transforms random tragedy into a story with meaning, a moral lesson wrapped in mystery. Here's a quirky tidbit. In other cultures, curses take many forms, from voodoo dolls in the Caribbean to the evil eye in Mediterranean folklore. The Pharaoh's curse fits into this global pattern, showing how human psychology shapes our fears and legends. Historians still argue about how much the Pharaoh's curse is a uniquely Egyptian phenomenon versus part of a broader human tendency to create supernatural explanations. This debate invites you to look beyond the story itself and consider what it tells us about ourselves. Moreover, the curse legend endures because it touches on universal themes: respect for the dead, the fear of punishment, and the allure of mystery. These themes resonate deeply, keeping the story alive in books, movies, and campfire tales. As you reflect on this, you realize that the curse is less about ancient magic and more about the human need to find meaning in life's uncertainty. Timeless tale that will continue to captivate, scare, and inspire. You're transported to the dusty archives and forgotten letters of early Egyptologists, where personal journals and correspondence reveal a more human side to the legend of the Pharaoh's curse. These writings capture moments of doubt, fear, wonder, and even humor, reminding you that the explorers behind the headlines were flesh and blood, not just shadowy figures in a supernatural drama. Howard Carter's journals, for instance, offer glimpses into his meticulous work and occasional unease. He noted strange noises and unexplained cold spots inside the tomb, but also expressed skepticism about the curse stories spreading outside. His closest associates had mixed reactions, some amused, others genuinely worried. Here's a quirky tidbit. One letter describes a team member who swore he saw a glowing figure in the tomb at night, later joking that it was just his imagination. Or perhaps the boy king himself keeping watch. Historians still argue how much these personal accounts shaped public perception of the curse. Did the explorers fuel the myth intentionally, or were they swept up in it? The truth is murky. But these documents add depth to the story, revealing the interplay between fact, belief, and storytelling. You also discover that early media coverage often sensationalized these accounts, emphasizing fear and mystery to captivate readers, sometimes distorting the explorer's more measured voices. As you leaf through these dusty pages, you sense the tension between scientific pursuit and the irresistible pull of legenda, tension that continues to define the curse's place in history and culture. You delve into the fascinating world of ancient Egyptian funerary art, where every image and symbol carved on tomb walls serves a vital purpose, not merely decorative, but protective and instructive. This art is a visual guide for the soul's journey, a map designed to guide the deceased safely through the perilous afterlife and ward off evil. Picture vibrant scenes of gods, mythical creatures, and ritual ceremonies painted in bold colors, their forms frozen in timeless grace. Each figure embodies a piece of the sacred story, the judgment before Osiris, the offerings made by loved ones, and the triumph of Mat over chaos. These images weren't static. They were believed to have magical power, activating spells and blessings for the tomb's occupant. A quirky detail you might find surprising is that some tomb paintings include depictions of magical weapons, wielded by the deceased, or divine protectors like knives, bows, or fire that symbolize defense against hostile spirits or intruders. It's almost like ancient Egyptian security systems, painted in glorious fresco. Historians still argue how literally these images were taken. Were they purely symbolic, or did the Egyptians believe they held real power to influence the afterlife? The answer is probably both, reflecting a blend of art, religion, and magic. Funerary art also served to communicate social status and divine favor. The more elaborate the paintings, the greater the hope of a peaceful and prosperous afterlife. This gave added importance to the tomb's protection and, by extension, the curses designed to preserve it. As you imagine yourself standing in a richly decorated tomb chamber, surrounded by this magical artwork, you realize how integral these visual stories were to ancient Egyptian beliefs about death and protection, adding another layer to the fascinating puzzle of the Pharaoh's curse. You now enter the fascinating world of Egypt's ancient burial traps, a mix of clever engineering and mystical safeguards designed to protect the pharaoh's tombs from intruders. These traps weren't just practical barriers, they were intertwined with the spiritual beliefs that guided the entire funerary process, meant to confuse and punish anyone who dared disturb the resting place. Imagine sliding stone doors that seal tight, hidden pits filled with spikes, or labyrinthine corridors, designed to disorient would-be robbers. Some tombs even featured secret passageways, only known to the priests and builders. The engineering involved was impressive, combining precise craftsmanship with a profound understanding of psychology, how fear and uncertainty could stop an intruder in their tracks. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some traps relied on seemingly mundane objects like jars filled with bees or pots of snakes that would be disturbed if the tomb was entered improperly. It's like an ancient version of setting off a noisy alarm system, except with potentially lethal consequences. Historians still argue how effective these traps truly were. Despite their ingenuity, tomb robbers often found ways around them, suggesting that the traps served more as psychological deterrents than foolproof defenses. In addition to physical traps, the spiritual traps, curses, and spells worked hand in hand with these mechanical devices, creating a layered defense system that combined fear of bodily harm with fear of divine punishment. As you imagine navigating these deadly corridors, you realize the lengths to which the ancient Egyptians went to protect their rulers' eternal homes. This blend of science and superstition is another thread in the intricate fabric of the Pharaoh's curse. You step into the realm of ancient Egyptian funerary rituals, ceremonies filled with solemnity and symbolism, designed to secure the pharaoh's safe passage to the afterlife. These rituals were complex, involving priests, chants, and sacred objects, all woven into a spiritual framework that aimed to preserve the king's power beyond death. Picture the opening of the mouth ceremony, where priests used ritual tools to symbolically restore the deceased's senses, breath, sight, and speech, ensuring the soul could function fully in the next world. This act was crucial as it reanimated the body spiritually, bridging the gap between mortality and eternity. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some ceremonies included offerings not only for the dead, but also for the gods who guarded the tomb, as a way to appease divine forces and protect against curses or malevolent spirits. This reciprocal relationship highlights the Egyptians' deep belief in balance and respect. Historians still argue about the exact details and variations of these rituals across different periods and regions, as records can be fragmentary or symbolic rather than literal. But the central theme remains. Death was not the end, but a transformation, and these rites were essential for the transition. These funerary rites also reinforced the social and political status of the pharaoh, emphasizing their divine role and continuing influence. By ensuring a successful journey to the afterlife, the king maintained cosmic order and prosperity for Egypt. As you imagine the solemn chants echoing through temple halls and the flicker of torchlight on sacred statues, you feel the weight of tradition and belief that surrounds the pharaoh's final journey, an ancient dance of life, death, and eternal protection. You find yourself contemplating the fascinating role of ancient Egyptian priests in the story of the pharaoh's curse. These priests were not merely religious functionaries, but powerful figures who controlled knowledge of rituals, magic, and tomb construction. Their role extended beyond the living world, acting as intermediaries who maintained the delicate balance between the mortal realm and the divine. Imagine priests performing daily rites to sustain the spirit of the deceased king, ensuring the gods remained favorable and the tomb's protective spells stayed potent. They were guardians of sacred knowledge, tasked with both spiritual maintenance and the physical security of the tombs. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some priests were believed to possess magical tongues, capable of speaking spells that could literally alter reality. This idea reinforced the belief that words carved or spoken held tremendous power, enough to bind or break curses. Historians still argue the extent of the priest's involvement in creating or reinforcing curses. Were they architects of these protective spells, or did some curses arise organically from the collective fears of the time? Likely, it was a combination, reflecting the priest's role as both protectors and enforcers of religious doctrine. These religious figures also had political clout, often aligning with pharaohs to legitimize their rule. By controlling tomb rituals and curses, priests could influence power dynamics, weaving curses into a broader system of social control. As you envision the priest's solemn ceremonies, you understand their central role in weaving the tapestry of belief, magic, and authority that underpins the enduring myth of the pharaohs. Curse, a myth that continues to fascinate and mystify us today. You're now drawn into the intriguing world of Egypt's royal tomb treasures, dazzling artifacts meant to accompany the pharaoh into the afterlife. These treasures were not mere symbols of wealth, but powerful objects believed to provide protection, status, and comfort to the deceased king on his journey beyond. Imagine chests overflowing with gold jewelry, intricately carved amulets, and ceremonial weapons, each piece crafted with exquisite detail and imbued with spiritual significance. These treasures were often inscribed with protective spells, serving both as status symbols and magical safeguards. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some amulets were shaped like scarabs, beetles representing rebirth and transformation, an ancient Egyptian way of saying, "I'm not just rich. I'm ready to start over in the afterlife." Historians still argue about how much these treasures were practical versus symbolic. Did the pharaoh really need all this gold in the afterlife, or was it more about projecting power and ensuring eternal reverence? The consensus leans toward a mixture of both. These treasures were also targets for tomb robbers, which is part of what fueled the need for curses and protective spells. The more valuable the hoard, the stronger the warnings, turning riches into both a blessing and a curse. As you picture yourself holding these ancient artifacts, you appreciate how material wealth and spiritual belief intertwined to shape the Egyptian understanding of death and immortality, fascinating aspect of the pharaoh's enduring legacy. You venture now into the psychological impact the curse stories had on early explorers and modern audiences, alike a mixture of fascination, fear, and the power of suggestion that turned tales into tangible experiences. The idea of a curse didn't just reside in ancient inscriptions, but entered the minds and dreams of those who encountered them. Imagine standing at the entrance to a freshly opened tomb, knowing that countless warnings have been etched into stone. The atmosphere is thick with anticipation, and maybe a dash of paranoia. Explorers often reported feelings of unease, sudden chills, or a creeping dread, experiences that psychologists today might attribute to the power of expectation and anxiety. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some researchers suggest that mass psychogenic illness or collective anxiety might explain some of the supposed effects of the curse. People becoming sick or experiencing symptoms simply because they believed they were cursed. It's a fascinating look at how mind and body intertwine. Historians still argue about how much psychological factors contributed to the legend's longevity. Did belief in the curse cause real physical symptoms, or were these just coincidences, amplified by storytelling? The line is blurred, inviting you to consider how stories shape reality. This psychological dimension extends beyond explorers to popular culture, where the curse continues to enthrall and terrify audiences, demonstrating the enduring power of myth to affect human emotions deeply. As you reflect on this, you realize that the curse is as much a story about human psychology as it is about ancient magic, a reminder that sometimes the scariest things are the ones we create in our minds. You now explore how the Pharaoh's curse inspired a wide array of conspiracy theories and speculative tales that continue to swirl around Egyptology. These theories often stretch the boundaries of evidence, mixing fact with fiction and captivating those hungry for mystery and hidden truths. Imagine secret societies guarding ancient knowledge, lost technologies buried deep beneath the sands, or powerful curses that still affect anyone who dares to uncover the Pharaoh's secrets. These narratives feed off the allure of forbidden knowledge and the human tendency to find patterns in the unexplained. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some conspiracy theories link the curse to extraterrestrial involvement, suggesting aliens either built the pyramids or bestowed curses to protect their secrets. While entertaining, these ideas have no basis in mainstream archaeology but show how the curse legend fuels endless speculation. Historians still argue about the impact of such theories on public understanding of Egyptology. While some see them as harmless fun that sparks interest, others worry they muddy the waters, overshadowing real history and scientific inquiry. This fascination with conspiracy shows how the curse remains a potent symbol, blank canvas onto which people project their hopes, fears, and imagination. So, as you consider these modern myths, you recognize that the Pharaoh's curse is more than an ancient tale. It's a living story that continues to evolve and inspire, reflecting our enduring fascination with mystery and the unknown. You're now drawn into the scientific attempts to debunk the curse and separate fact from fiction. Modern researchers have conducted detailed investigations into the tombs, the supposed cursed artifacts, and the histories of those connected to them, peeling back layers of myth to reveal a more grounded reality. Consider studies analyzing the deaths of individuals linked to Tutankhamun's tomb. While some passed away under mysterious circumstances, most had clear medical causes unrelated to any supernatural force. This data suggests that coincidence and natural causes explain many of the tragic stories associated with the curse. Here's a quirky tidbit. One study found that some supposed victims lived long lives or died decades after the tomb's discovery, which hardly fits the narrative of a swift and deadly curse. It's like the curse took a coffee break. Historians still argue about how to communicate these findings without stripping the legend of its allure. After all, the curse's mystique plays a big role in popular culture and tourism. Scientific inquiry also challenges the idea of curses as literal phenomena, instead highlighting natural hazards like toxic molds, psychological effects, and human error. You see how science doesn't necessarily kill the story but adds nuance, inviting a richer understanding of history where myth and reality coexist. So, as you explore these scientific perspectives, you appreciate how curiosity and skepticism work hand in hand to unravel one of history's most enduring legends. You're stepping into the fascinating relationship between tourism and the legend of the Pharaoh's curse. Egypt's tombs have drawn millions of visitors eager to glimpse the mysteries of ancient kings. But the allure of the curse adds an extra layer of excitement and caution. Imagine tourists wandering through the Valley of the Kings, gazing at hieroglyphics and golden artifacts, while stories of curses whisper in the background. Guides often share these tales, mixing history with legend to create an unforgettable experience. The curse has become part of the package, drawing thrill seekers and history buffs alike. Here's a quirky tidbit. Souvenir shops near archaeological sites sell curse protection charms and mummy-themed trinkets, capitalizing on the myth while feeding the fun. Historians and tourism officials still argue about balancing myth and fact. Too much emphasis on curses risks overshadowing the real historical and cultural significance of the sites, while ignoring them may lessen the tourist draw. The curse, then, plays a dual role. It preserves ancient stories and boosts modern tourism, keeping Egypt's rich history alive in popular imagination. As you picture the bustling crowds and eager visitors, you realize how the Pharaoh's curse continues to bridge past and present, history and legend, fear and fascination. You're drawn into the continuing debates among scholars and enthusiasts about the authenticity of the Pharaoh's curse, whether it's purely myth, partly true, or something in between. This debate keeps the story alive, inviting new generations to explore, question, and imagine. Consider the evidence on both sides. the historical records of curses inscribed on tombs, the mysterious events following tomb openings, and the cultural significance of curses in ancient Egypt. At the same time, there are scientific explanations, skepticism, and calls for critical thinking. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some researchers joke that the curse might be the earliest known example of viral marketing intended to keep tombs safe by scaring off potential robbers. Historians still argue over the interpretations of inscriptions and events. Some see curses as spiritual protection, others as political tools, and many acknowledge the blend of fact and fiction. This ongoing debate highlights how legends evolve, influenced by culture, discovery, and interpretation. The curse remains a symbol of mystery, respect, and the human fascination with the unknown. As you reflect on these discussions, you realize that the Pharaoh's curse isn't just a story from the past, it's a living narrative that challenges us to consider how we perceive history, myth, and belief. You reach the final steps of this long journey through the tale of the Pharaoh's curse, where ancient mystery meets modern reflection. The legend, woven from threads of history, superstition, science, and imagination, stands as a testament to humanity's enduring fascination with life beyond death and the power of stories. Picture the golden mask of Tutankhamun, glinting under museum lights, a symbol not just of a boy king, but of an entire culture's complex relationship with death, power, and the unknown. The curse may have been a way to protect that legacy, a warning that respect for the dead is sacred. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some modern-day Egyptians still regard these stories with a mix of reverence and skepticism, showing how the legend continues to live in unexpected ways. Historians still argue about the curse's true nature, but perhaps the most important takeaway is how the story connects us across millennia, reminding us that myths are more than mere tales. They are reflections of human hopes, fears, and the eternal quest to understand our place in the cosmos. As you settle down to rest, the echoes of ancient chants and whispered curses fade into the night, leaving you with a sense of wonder and quiet awe. Now that you've traveled through the depths of ancient tombs and the heights of human imagination, it's time to let the story gently settle. The curse of the Pharaohs, whether truth or legend, reminds us how history and myth intertwine in mysterious ways. It's a tale shaped by fear, faith, and fascination, bridge connecting past and present, fact and fantasy. As you lie back, feel the weight of ages softly lift from your shoulders. The sands of time continue to shift, but the stories endure, whispering through the ages like a distant desert breeze. Remember, legends are not just about curses or magic, they're about our shared humanity and the mysteries that bind us all. So, breathe deeply, let the quiet hum of the night cradle you and drift gently into dreams filled with golden tombs, ancient gods, and the timeless dance of history and myth. Good night and sweet dreams.